Hello, this is again. Almitra, we're meeting after a bit, and in our last meeting, which was a few moons ago, we had spoken about waste to energy, specifically in the context of India. Why waste to energy incineration is not a viable solution for India, and you had shared your thoughts on that. And also told us a little bit more about the technology. You spoke about the unviability and the dangers of incineration, which is called waste to energy, or WTE. Could you give us a history of WTE in India and how you addressed this particular issue in your court case on waste management?
Well, the whole waste to energy story began with a big Danish loan to put up in Timarpur at Delhi a 3.5 megawatt first waste to energy plant. That was for the Danish government to help its own industry sell an expensive plant. So the plant ran for exactly 6 days and then could not continue and was shut down in 20 or 21 days. And the reason was that Indian waste, because of being paid for by tonnage and everybody chucking heavy stones, bricks, and debris to increase their transport payment. What the Timarpur plant received was waste with a heavy amount of inerts, and these just jammed the conveyors and broke the shredder blades, and the whole plant couldn't work on such waste. So the Danish people just walked away from the plant after 21 days. And then they told India, now as per the agreement, you have to pay back our loan. And India said, how can we pay a loan for a plant which never ran more than 6 days? So the case went to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. And can you believe it? The Indian taxpayer lost because the agreement, which said that Delhi municipality will supply suitable waste to the plant, did not define what is suitable waste. So on that one point, India lost and had to pay Denmark for a plant which never ran. And that was the first of many sorrowful stories. Just to recap, why we need composting is for our agricultural country to return our nutrients to the soil instead of burning them. Also, on economic grounds, the capital expenditure for disposing of 100 tons of waste is 13 to 43 times higher with burn technologies, incineration, pyrolysis, and so on, compared to composting. And the power is all, they keep saying you get 2 for 1, you get power and waste reduction. So I'll read out what our Supreme Court expert committee told the court about waste to energy in 98. Power from municipal waste costs twice as much as thermal power and 2.5 times as much as hydropower, and has not been proven successful in any developing country. Local bodies are cautioned not to adopt expensive technologies of power generation, fuel pelletization, incineration, etc., until they are proven under Indian conditions. Unfortunately, the solid waste management rules which came out reluctantly and at the last possible minute, squeezed in the following comment, which was not there in the draft. This final municipal rules, we had started the case with 301 lakh cities, class 1 cities. But the rules luckily came for every municipal authority, a few thousand of them. So that was good news for me. But in section 5B of the rules, it said incineration with or without energy recovery, including pelletization, can also be used for processing waste in specific cases. That was the foot in the door. And since then, waste to energy tenders, non-starters, failures, a couple of convictions and 4 court cases and so on, everything has grown exponentially and have become mainstream, fueled by massive subsidies. Tell us what the CSC report said again.
So the current report says that there are 40 tenders which have been floated, out of which 4 are operational and 3 have shut down.
So by 2016, unfortunately, in the amended solid waste management rules, the word incineration appears in the definitions. And then there are two sections which read like this. Section 9, duties of the Ministry of Power are to A, decide the tariff charges for waste to energy power, and B, to compel the electricity distribution companies, the DISCOMs, to buy this expensive waste to energy power, whether they want it or not. Section 10 below that spells out the duties of the MNRES, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy Sources. And its duties are 10A, facilitate infrastructure creation for waste to energy plants, and 10B, provide appropriate subsidy or incentives for such waste to energy plants. So now it is the law of the land to not only give a subsidy for an unviable process, but also force the DISCOMs to buy the expensive power, which ultimately the taxpayers will have to support in their bills, electricity bills.
Did you follow this up in your court cases?
The court case came later, but from 2000 onwards, after these rules came out, I wrote cautionary letters and notes, lots and lots, to all authorities, including chief ministers, chief secretaries, also President Kalam and Sonia. Out of all of them, only Manmohan Singh, who was then the finance minister, responded proactively with a written reply. That is a rare courtesy from officials who usually never reply at all. The reason being, if they say yes, the audit committee may ask why. If they say no, the press may say, why are you against some good things? So they just never reply. But Manmohan not only replied, but he was at that time the chairman from 1998 of the governing body of CRRID, that is the Center for Research in Rural and Industrial Development at Chandigarh. And he had them invite both the MNES, that means Ministry of New and something Sources, now called MNRE, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, invited those ministries and myself and other activists for a debate on the pros and cons of waste to energy. But sadly, not one invitee from MNES attended, leaving only us activists to reinforce each other's views, a bunch of converted talking to each other. Then there was a Dhaka meeting in 2004 where a representative, I think he was an urban development official, went as a delegate and was party to a unanimous SAARC resolution stating that, and I'll read it, SAARC countries agree that incineration as well as unproven technologies such as plasma should not be considered as an option for the treatment of their municipal solid waste for low calorific value and environmental pollution potential. The Philippines still, from that time till now, bans waste to energy in their country, but India never ratified this resolution, which their own member had proposed. My court thing began in January 2004, when I decided to use my Supreme Court case to turn off the subsidy tap, which was fueling all these rash of WT tenders and scams. So I filed an IA-14, interlocutory application 14, in my case number WPC 888 of 96, seeking a stay on subsidies pending a cost-benefit analysis of municipal waste to energy, which the MNES in court stated it had not done, and also I asked for an independent review committee to study the process viability of waste to energy through mass balance, water balance, and energy balance. That means how much material goes in, what comes out. Is it true that, 95% of the solid waste disappears and only 5% ash is left, which is untrue? And water balance, how much water is used per ton of waste managed? And the energy balance, after you take away the energy required for drying such super wet organic waste, which is 60-70% in Indian waste compared to 20% abroad, and the energy for conveying, burning and this and that, what amount of energy are you left a surplus or a negative? So this mass balance, water balance, and energy balance is very important.
So what was the outcome of the stay order? Did anything come out of it? Anything,
Well,
did anything substantial?
In Jan 2004, I asked. In May 2005, the Supreme Court directed a pause on subsidies pending the formation of an expert committee, which I had asked for, including NGOs, and its report on the failed Lucknow waste to energy plant and others. MNES did form a committee, but it's an eye-opener to see how government gets around every good intention. So the entire committee was chaired by them and packed with their members. And they had two NGOs, two non-MNES members. The report they submitted in May 2007, that's how slowly the cases go. Their conclusion was, lamely, that the operational problems at one plant, Lucknow, should not form the basis to judge the efficiency of the particular technology, which is kind of a cop-out argument. There was a dissenting report by Professor Shyama Solekar of IIT Bombay and the late Girish Sant of Prayas Pune, which is a very well-regarded energy NGO. But their dissent note never got on the court record and was not considered at all. Unfortunately, in May 2007, it was one of the rare 54 hearings which I did not attend. And at that, personally, for which I was not personally present. And at that hearing, the court modified its earlier stay order on subsidies and permitted MNES to go ahead with 5 pilot projects chosen by them, keeping the expert committee recommendations in mind. There were hardly any recommendations. And then take appropriate decision in the matter and report after 6 months. Unfortunately, that IA-14, it never came on board again because so many other IAs in that case, Bhatti mines and this and that, took up time till August 2010. And can you believe it, from August 2010 till September 14, my case was neither posted nor heard. Forget about adjournment. And in September 14, when it did come board, the Supreme Court transferred it to the NGT as OA 199 of 2014, which concluded rather promptly by the end of the year 2015.
So which were these 5 pilot WTE plants which were studied by the committee?
Which they were allowed to promote.
Yes.
One was the Lucknow biomethanation plant. That one failed again because their incoming waste, again because of payment by weight, it was 30 to 40% debris and inerts. And although there were truckloads of market waste available, the drivers would divert it and sell them privately, the pure market waste, to farmers for their own benefit. And those market waste truckloads for biomethanation never reached the Lucknow plant. A second plant started in Bangalore by Srinivas Gayatri. They were given 6 acres of land at a dumping ground by the municipality, municipal land. And illegally, they mortgaged it to a bank, took a huge loan, skipped town with it, and anyway, didn't spend it on the plant. Until today, the plant has never started. There are huge wooden crates saying, this is our motors, this is our this machinery, that machinery. No one's ever looked inside whether there's anything at all in there except rats. So it's a big hoax. Then there are 2 other hoaxes by Selco, which at that time seemed the most promising of the plants because they were running to some extent. They were both in the old Andhra Pradesh. The plant in Hyderabad, as well as the one in Vijayawada, both of them claimed and got paid high waste to energy power tariffs from their power company, while they were secretly running them on biomass, which is entitled to a far lower tariff because it's easy to do. So in the Hyderabad plant, they had a small covered shed where they claimed that 1 foot deep municipal garbage was sun-dried in 24 hours to make pellets. And the pellets were being supplied to part 2 of their plant 50 kilometers away. So if anyone tried to inspect the plant, by the time they left plant A and traveled 2 hours to plant B, the word had gone, set up this show, that show. When the whole outward of plant A and inward of plant B is in the hands of the same Selco, you can understand the scam. In Vijayawada, they had a few fresh municipal waste piles in the front yard in case anyone came to visit. But all the shopkeepers and other residents along the approach road, they all confirmed that truckloads and truckloads of groundnut shells and sawdust, that means burnable biomass, were going at night to the plant. Probably cash payment not shown. And the records pretended that all this high tariff power was being generated by municipal waste, whereas actually it was being generated by something which is perfectly doable, burning groundnut shells to make power. And the fifth one, I can't remember now. My listeners may wonder why I did not expose these frauds or file a contempt case against the MNES, now MNRE, for continuing to hugely subsidize ever more waste to energy till date, even after the 5 plants, and not reporting to the Supreme Court. Well, there were 2 reasons. Firstly, the hearing proceedings did not really give space for this. But more importantly, in my entire case, I've chosen to take a positive attitude, saying I will not say no to anything unless I can give a yes solution to the problem. And I did not, it was quite clear that the brazen defiance of the center and the clout they had and the lengths to which they would go to subvert, common sense and rationality, I would end up spending all my valuable, what shall I say, brownie points with the court in a negative case, saying, look, naughty, and that kind of thing, rather than concentrating on at least 6 other positive outcomes, which I needed and wanted and eventually got in the NGT. So it was a conscious decision not to walk a negative route, but till today, when I look at the extent of the waste to energy scam, I really wonder whether I did the right thing. The fact of the matter is that the economics of it is dictating. There are 40 tenders, but India does not have 40 waste to energy plants at the end of 35 years. So if there are only 4 plus 3 shut ones, that itself speaks for the unviability of it. But if there is willful corruption and wanting to give subsidies for a bribe, subsidies can be misused. You take them and you never start or never progress with your plan. I mean, how do you stop it? Frankly, tackling corruption is a bigger problem than I am able to handle. So I leave it to the citizens of today and concerned activists who will have to find new avenues to fight this much needed battle, and any suggestions are welcome.
Thank you so much for sharing this information with us. I'm going to ask you a few more questions if you have any.
Tell me.
Did at that point of time CPCB have any inputs on the recommendations made by the committee? Was it
they were
considered? Was it part of the committee?
They were not part of the committee. They were not invited to comment. It was only MNES, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy Sources, which put itself forward as the champion of the new state-of-the-art solve all problems technology.
And we know that the quarry, which is Tejpur Pahadi in Delhi, is being converted to a waste dump with fly ash and bottom ash from the waste to energy plants in Delhi. Clearly, no bricks are being made as defined by the
rules,
which should have been done. And in spite of them flouting the rules so blatantly, they continue to run and probably even expand to another 1 or 2 plants in Delhi. How is that in, how do you think the citizens should tackle this?
I really have no answer because honestly, the Sukhdev Vihar citizens, they have come together and they have been vocal and vociferous about that Sukhdev Vihar waste to energy plant. That plant was never supposed to be there. The Jindal company was given that you will put up a waste to energy plant in the location of the failed original Timarpur plant. So they've taken possession of Timarpur as well as Sukhdev Vihar. They're doing absolutely nothing at Timarpur, or I don't know what they're pretending to do there. And the entire operation is happening at Sukhdev Vihar. They started building a third huge tall chimney in front of everyone's eyes without any permission, without expansion permission. So the Delhi the Supreme Court constituted a committee for commenting on the waste situation in Delhi. And I was a member of that committee also. But it was such a clear divide. Nobody at all listened to the civil society experts, NGOs, and activists on one side of the table. And on the other side of the table were the commissioners of North, South, East Delhi, NDMC, this, that, and the other. And the chairman was the Urban Development Principal Secretary. The report that came out took only the municipal corporation's views and not ours. We prepared and filed an objection or dissent. Somehow, I think it never got into the case record, and there was no one active person to fight this suo motu case. The case started after a dengue patient was refused admission in so many hospitals. Child died, parents committed suicide, and the court took it up suo motu on their own without any petitioner. So, and the excuse was, what can we do? Dengue mosquitoes arise from garbage. So that's how garbage came into the dengue case. But because it was a suo motu case, I think this is one weakness of them. The committee filed a report. The court took the report on record, but then nothing happened because unless the court itself chooses to be a champion for pushing the case, there's no real petitioner or owner of the case or the objections.
Now, looking at emissions, these plants are fine for releasing dioxins and furans, irrespective of the fact that it is causing irreparable harm to the citizens who live around that area.
A hospital, a school nearby, and so many things apart from citizens.
They be continuing to run in spite of defaulting constantly on failure to monitor the emissions.
Well, I'm totally in support of the hundreds of Sukhdev Vihar residents who have been asking this same question and saying it's not acceptable. The plant has to go, it has to move. It needs to go back to Timarpur or somewhere else. I think Tekand was an area they were looking at. But Tekand will also soon be overtaken by the growth of Delhi, urban sprawl. And then what are the Tekand residents going to do? And it's close to the bird sanctuary and so on. So this is what I'm saying. The government stamps with such a heavy boot on civic voices and civic dissent in India. It's a tragedy, and except for saying that one has to persist with the objection and hope for a better day, I really don't see what is the solution. The Sukhdev Vihar people have been doing everything possible that they can.
And on the other hand, we've just done with G20 meetings in our city, in Delhi. What are your thoughts about polluting plants earning carbon credits?
That's a very interesting question, which I haven't thought about. Well, it's like the earlier story that how can a polluting plant be given a subsidy? In fact, being required by law in the 2016 rules to facilitate the setting up of them and subsidizing them and forcing the power companies to buy this unviable, unaffordable power and dump it on citizens. As I say, the only thing that seems to be saving the situation is the economics of it, which is why the 40 tenders haven't become 40 working plants. I forgot to mention one other thing that happened in 2014. There was a Kasturi Ranjan chaired committee to look into waste to energy. And their recommendation was it is not for tier 1, tier 2, tier 2, 3 cities. Only the biggest metros with more than 1,000 tons of waste or something like that can even consider it as one of the options, not the option. But nobody's even listening to or following the Kasturirangan Report. These 40 tenders, we don't have 40 class 1 cities asking for these. I think one needs to do an analysis of who is asking. But when the rules themselves say you shall facilitate, you shall subsidize, you shall buy their power, it's a very dismal thing. And as I said, if I had to oppose and say, stay the rules, block the rules, because this line is unacceptable, what about the 99 other lines which are very beneficial and takes the country forward on a cleaner waste path? I plead guilty to taking a conscious decision that I'll live with 90% success.
I think that has in itself lent the country a lot of goodness and a path to move forward. And overall, we have a great set of rules, provided the ULBs and the politicians allow them to function and make them happen. I think where the will is, had the will been there to truly execute them to the spirit, we would have been a transformed country.
Absolutely. It's only lack of administrative and political will, and corruption is getting in the way. There's a very interesting Hindu report today that the Karnataka High Court has scolded the BBMP. Why? What are you doing about these black spots? Just fining violators doesn't seem to work. You need to invoke the the Indian Penal Code, which now has some unrememberable new name, to use police powers to penalize repeat offenders of dumping waste on the road. It's a matter of trying to accommodate the IT workers and others who work odd shifts and who live alone in PGs and for whom the system doesn't work. One should simply make the PG owners responsible for collecting everyone's waste and giving it if the person can't give it themselves. There are so many simple, obvious ways to comply if you want to comply, or if you want to enforce compliance.
However, on this note, I would like to share with our listeners that there is also a campaign called Why Burn Waste, which has been run by SWMRT, which speaks and clearly describes the pros and the cons of burn technology, incineration, and how all of us should be better informed, not only as citizens, but also as people who run the city and who are equal participants in not just making the city more livable, but also are living and breathing the same air. So Why Burn Waste is also on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's on Twitter, it's also on LinkedIn in the SWMRT handle. And Why Burn Waste is also standalone on Instagram. So you can look it up, equip yourself with the knowledge and know-how about burn technology, which is also called waste to energy, and understand more and take a proactive engagement or involvement if it is coming to your city or close to your home. Engage with your community, engage with your urban local body, and make sure that 10 years down your line, you or your family or your children or your community don't have to suffer for the worst of it. So thank you so much, Almitra, for giving so much of your time, your knowledge, your information, a complete lowdown on history. And you're like our institutional memory for anything garbage. So thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Okay, bye.